What you're looking at right here is the brand new Fossil Gen 6, a beautiful smartwatch with a fast, smooth experience and an impressive battery life as well. And so, once again, Fossil's trying to save the smartwatch. In a time where all but 3 smartwatches are basically on death row, getting left behind with a new update, Fossil's swooping in with beautiful hardware, top-of-the-line specs, and like I said, some really impressive battery controls. So we love the Fossil Gen 5. It was really our top pick for Android watches for the past 2 years, and that gives the Fossil Gen 6 some pretty big shoes to fill. But the Gen 6 is boasting major improvements with a new processor, a big update coming soon, and some more improvements to the health sensing as well. But there is just one thing holding this back from being pretty much the perfect Android smartwatch. One thing that's holding it back, and we're going to talk about that throughout this video. Of course, we will also put this watch to the test and show you the microphone quality, the speaker quality, the accuracy of the heart rate and the GPS, and tell you everything else you need to know before considering buying the Fossil Gen 6. So I've been wearing the smartwatch for the past week, and there were some things that I really liked about it, but also a couple things that I didn't like quite as much, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we talk about the design or the accuracy, I want to talk a little bit more about a statement I made in the beginning of this video, and that is that pretty much every other smartwatch is on death row. What did I really mean by that? Well, as I mentioned before on this channel, there's a big update coming. And essentially, if you look at smartwatches right now, if you are going to make a smartwatch app and you wanted to do it for Android users, you had to decide between Fitbit or Samsung or WearOS or Garmin or all these different operating systems meant that people would make an app for one or the other and there wasn't a uniform platform. And alternatively, they would say, well, I could just make an Apple Watch app and it works for all Apple Watches, which is most Apple users out there. So that's why Apple Watches generally had more and a better app selection. And this is finally changing with the new unified platform, which is essentially a partnership between Fitbit and Google and Samsung, agreeing that they're all going to use one operating system, meaning that you're going to get better apps. And this new operating system is WearOS 3. WearOS 3 is rolling out to very, very select devices. This is one of them. But other than this device, we have 2 devices from TicWatch, and we have the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. That's it. No other devices out there are getting WearOS 3 except anything new being created in the future. So if you have an Android and you don't want to get left behind without updates, you really want to be looking at one of these 3 devices. So with that being said, that's why the Fossil Gen 6 is such a significant device. It's really the first, honestly, I think it's the best looking out of this group, but of course I will compare this to the other 2 a little bit in this video, but in a full in-depth video in the future. So if you want to see that, definitely go down and click that subscribe button so you don't miss it when that video comes out. So let's look a little closer at this design. You can see on the front we have a 1.3-inch AMOLED display. It gets really bright, it automatically dims in dimmer environments, it's easy to read, and it has an always-on display option as well. So overall, I think the front looks pretty nice. We do have a black bezel around there. I don't recommend using a bright orange watch face like you see here. If you have a black watch face, it really hides it a lot better and you don't notice that much at all. But on the outside, you'll see the case itself. This is the 44mm option, and I think it looks fantastic. This is the stainless steel version, so you can see it has that metal bracelet. But of course, you might be saying, I don't want to run with the metal bracelet, or maybe you want to change it every now and then. Something I think Fossil does really well is make their designs versatile. So if you want this to look a little more formal, you can put the metal bracelet on there or a leather strap. And if you want to go work out, you can very easily swap these out with a very common 22mm strap to put on a silicone band or whatever else you want so that you're good for working out for all different situations. And looking at the outside a little closer, you see that we have kind of a ridged bezel on the outside. It's not a rotating bezel. It looks like one, but it's not. Instead, you do have a rotating crown on the right. So a 3-button configuration on the right, you can customize the top and bottom buttons, and I'll talk more about that later in the video, but the middle button is your back button, your home button, your app drawer, and it is a rotating crown as well. And you can see that now we have a little crown guard on either side, so you're not going to worry about hitting that button by accident if you're trying to reach for one of the others. So, and then if you flip it over to the back, you can see we have some differences here as well. One of them being the charging is not the concentric rings. Instead, the rings are split into kind of concentric Cs on either side because because you do have double charging here, essentially, giving you a much faster charging than the previous Fossil Gen 5. And in the middle, we have our array of health sensors, which now include SpO2 tracking, which should give you more in-depth sleep tracking. And then on the crown guard on the right, I think this is cool, it's really sneaky. I believe that's the microphone they actually put right there. And on the left side, we have our speaker. So we'll get into a speaker test in a second to see how loud this is, but you could use that for phone calls, for voice assistant, for all types of things like that. Of course, it also has haptic feedback, and it is water resistant up to 3 atmospheres, so swimming or washing your hands or showering should not be a problem at all for this device. Okay, so with that being said, let's actually get into that speaker test now. So for a quick test of the speed and the speaker, let's check out Google Assistant. Tell me a joke.
Here's a joke for Halloween. What's an optimistic vampire's favorite drink? Be positive.
So this is a sample recording with the Fossil Gen 6 to see how the audio sounds from the onboard microphone. There is one microphone right next to the crown, and so if I was on a phone call, it would probably sound something like this. So that's a summary of the physical design. Personally, I think that's the main reason people will be buying this device, because it's a beautiful looking watch, has a fantastic physical design. It feels premium, but it's not too bulky. I think it's overall just a really well-designed smartwatch. But let's talk a little bit more about the health tracking side, because of course, smartwatches are becoming more and more meant for health tracking. People want ECGs and heart rate and things of that nature. And so right off the bat, I want to say that while this does have plenty of health tracking accessories or capabilities on here, it's not necessarily the main focus of this. So we don't have ECG. We don't have really advanced stress tracking. We do have sleep tracking. We do have blood oxygen, of course, pedometer, GPS, heart rate, and of course, you can track all types of different workouts on here. But keep in mind, that's not the main focus of this device. Not like Garmin, not like Polar, not like even Samsung. This one's really meant to be an accessory, like a peripheral device for your phone. So with that being said, let's look at the accuracy tracking anyway. I took this on several different runs. Obviously, I swapped out the band for a silicone one, and personally, I really liked it on the runs. It was really easy to see the information, very digestible, and you have plenty of options as well between the Google Fit app, which I'm not the biggest fan of. There's also the native one that Fossil kind of gives you, and you can get like Strava and all types of different apps to track that. Nike Run's another one. But looking at this right here, the accuracy of the GPS and the heart rate were not impressive, just to say it simply. If you look at the heart rate tracking, it did an okay job, but really where this fell apart, in my opinion, that makes it not an ideal fitness tracker was the GPS. So I ran without my phone nearby, so it was using its onboard GPS, and it said it was GPS connected right in the beginning. It said it had GPS signal, it knew where it was, but when I started running, it seemed to have not tracked the beginning of the workout. And instead, at the end of the 5-mile run, the watch was short by about half a mile. Now, Google Fit is a nightmare of an app, so I couldn't export a good map to show you guys, but I can tell you this. At the 12-minute mark, I knew that I ran approximately 1.5 miles. However, looking at the watch, it registered exactly 1 mile. So you can estimate that most of the error is in the beginning of this workout. My best guess is that the first half mile was completely untracked, even though the watch told me in the very beginning that it had an established GPS connection. I know that, like I said, that's not necessarily the main focus of buyers, in my opinion, for the Fossil Gen 6. I suspect most people will be buying this because of the interface and the aesthetics, and just as a really nice accessory as a side peripheral device for your phone. And so, talking a little bit more about the interface, it is subject to change. We're going to be seeing WearOS 3 hopefully in the next couple months, maybe by April or May of 2022. But for now, WearOS 2 is still a pretty solid interface. So if you press the top button, it'll open up whatever app you want. Right now I have it set to Google Fit. You can also tap and hold the center of the watch face and change between any watch faces you want. The right button is going to be your app drawer, and you can scroll through this as well. And if you press and hold the right button, it'll also open Google Assistant, as you can see right here. If you swipe from the left, you get kind of a little My Day thing. Google just really the assistant, honestly. If you swipe over from the right, you can go through some of your tiles, as they're calling them. And these are just different widgets for your sleep tracking, for Amazon Alex, and things of that nature. Swiping up from the bottom, you have your notifications, you can interact with the notifications and reply. And swiping down from the top, you get some quick settings. Of course, you can scroll for that as well. And if you press the bottom button on the right, again, that's another app that you can open, whatever app you have programmed. Right now on the bottom, I have Spotify. Now, I mentioned more than a few times that the battery controls are a highlight of this device. So if we just swipe down from the top, you can see the little battery icon on the right there. And when you tap on that, you have a couple options. Now, at first, it seems like there's not much. There's a daily mode, an extended mode, and a custom mode. Both each one of these, you can actually fully customize them to exactly what you want. So if we go to extended, for example, you can just turn it on very easily, or you can go into this and edit the settings and make sure you have exactly what you want. Now it's going to tell you that for extended mode, it's going to turn off a lot of stuff. It's really going to disable things. But what's interesting is if you go back to just the daily mode, even with this one, you can customize exactly what you want. So daily mode, you can turn on like tap to wake, lift to wake, Bluetooth, NFC, all these things on or off to really maximize the battery life available. So now I want to deviate a little bit from the subjective approach and talk about my opinions and my experience with the device. And so the first thing I noticed is that I really like the design. I think Fossil did a great job with the battery controls and the aesthetics and everything like that with the device, but it does have that hiccup of not having WearOS 3 yet. So it's hard for me to sit here and recommend this as a definite great buy because I don't know for sure when WearOS 3 is coming, and I don't know exactly what it's going to be like. So in the current landscape, I think this is a fantastic device. But there are some kind of interesting things that, again, make it a little bit more like a Fossil Gen 5.5 maybe, or 5.6, 5.7, I don't know. It's not quite at what the Fossil Gen 6 is really meant to be when a WearOS 3 rolls out. And so let's talk about some of the little differences right there. One of them is that unlike the Fossil Gen 5 when it was released, we now have offline Spotify. I think that's a fantastic feature to have when you're running and doing things like that. On top of that, although the battery is a very similar size, we now have a better processor on here, which is giving us better battery life in general. So last Friday, I woke up, the battery was at 100%. I went for a run around noon, and it was a 5-mile run. I had GPS on, I had my Bluetooth earbuds connected to this, listening to offline Spotify, and at the end of the run, I still had plenty of battery left to get me through the rest of the day. And at the end of the day, I think I ended at about 20-ish%. So the battery life on here is easily getting through an entire day, regardless of how much you work out, unless you do like a 5-hour workout. But I think people who are not pushing quite as much with GPS and with Bluetooth earbuds, you're more likely to see a solid 2-day battery life, if not even more than that, depending on how you optimize the battery within those battery controls. Some other interesting things, this technically still works with an iPhone, so I was able to set it up with my iPhone. I then disconnected and set it up with a Pixel, but I just thought it was interesting that at least for now with WearOS 2.0, you can still set it up with an iPhone. Unfortunately, this still has 8 GB of storage. I think that's not really enough for a device that now has offline Spotify. The Snapdragon 4100 does a great job, and Bluetooth 5.0 gives you a little extra range, so when your phone's in the other room and you're walking around your house, you still are able to stay connected to your device, and I think that's a solid upgrade as well. So overall, the Fossil Gen 6, I'll say is a fantastic smartwatch with a little asterisk. And the asterisk is essentially it needs an update. It's going to get an update, but the update's just not here yet. And so looking at the device, it has fantastic hardware. I think Fossil did really what Fossil does best, and they made a great looking smartwatch with a great battery life on here, great, pretty much everything they could do, but it's lacking an update. Really 2 updates for that matter. One of them is that the accuracy of the GPS was not where I thought it needed to be, and I think, again, an update could improve that. And the second thing is that it doesn't ship with WearOS 3.0, which if this doesn't sell well, I think that's going to be the main reason they're gonna be a victim of a bad launch, launching before WearOS 3 comes out. But regardless, I'm happy to see another watch in the landscape, in that lineup of now 3 or 4 devices that are going to get the WearOS 3 update. So leave a comment below. Would you buy the Fossil Gen 6 right now, knowing that eventually you have the promise of WearOS 3? Or are you just gonna hold back and wait until we actually see WearOS 3 on a non-Samsung device? I don't know. I wanna hear from you guys. Personally, I think it's still a pretty good buy. The Fossil Gen 6 is a nice looking watch, but I don't know. It's such a weird climate right now. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about this device. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.